So man has sown the wind and reaped the whirlwind. Perhaps in the next few hours there will be no remembrance of the past and no hope for the future that might have been. All the works of man will be consumed in the great fire out of which he was created. But perhaps at the heart of the burning light into which he has thrust his world, there is a heart that cares more for him than he has ever cared for himself.
It's certainly true to say that disaster movies are always profoundly and in some very acute and punctual sense shaped by historical circumstances, shaped by whatever happens to be uppermost in the discourse of disaster at the time in newspapers and political commentary. Most recently, of course, they have been large-scale environmental disasters. A disaster movie is as much about how we cope with disaster as the disaster itself. It's about making us feel a bit better about the ways in which, albeit perhaps only on an everyday level, or in a very small local compass, we can claw back a sense of order and creativity from the chaos.
London is shiny and clean and new. It's so sparkling clean that it can see its own reflection. London is beautiful and glittering and mesmerising. Its resplendent windows shine in the midday sun. Its blue glass buildings double the sky and mirror the passing clouds. There are rows and rows of lines and shapes that repeat endlessly like a Tibetan army of steel and glass. London strives to be perfect. Concrete and brick are cracked and uprooted so that the city can be more beautiful. The face of London is plumped up with silicone injections and smoothed over with chemical peels. The city purges all signs of age and forgets its material past so that we may have shiny, high-tech glass enclosures that reflect their surroundings so perfectly that they might as well be invisible. The building of the future is quiet and invisible. It does not offend. It does not even say what it is. An office, a luxury flat, a high-end sushi restaurant, a shopping mall, an airport. It might be all these things at once. The building of the future is so perfect and new that you can't help but imagine it being destroyed.
One can read almost geologically the city as a series of disasters. I think that the long history of disasters that have struck London as a city, the fire and the plague, that all does layer up in our understanding and our engagement with London as a setting for disaster movies when we watch a film. But of course it's rarely conscious. There's a sense in any viewer that it's a city that's premised on, in its historical development, on processes of creative destruction.
The fragile building of the future is almost not even there. It's seamlessly integrated into the city's continuously shifting pattern and swept along with the cycle of destruction and evolution that the streets obey. London chews up and digests itself so that it can grow once more, regurgitating what is no longer suitable for ingestion. These modern buildings are no longer imposing or ideological. They are see-through and shape-shifting with chameleon skin and 10,000 eyes. The building of the 21st century is fluid and vague. Buildings that were built with a specific purpose in mind have now been redefined. A building's exterior used to let us know what happened inside, but now things are less clear. Intentions, which at one time seemed set in stone, now seem less permanent. We reenact this city's destruction again and again as if its impermanence will one day spiral out of control. We turn our anxieties into fictional disasters and dystopian fantasies. The confusion and chaos of the city's rapidly shifting form is projected on screen as catastrophe. The city dweller is alienated and displaced. Instead of renovation and rejuvenation, they desire total wipeout. Rather than the purifying destruction of privately contracted demolition, they desire the mess and dirt and erosion and overgrowth of natural destruction.
There's the pleasure that we feel in seeing destruction because it enables us superficially, apparently, to solve all sorts of social and political contradictions at a stroke by simply eradicating those contradictions, sweeping them away in a flood or a fire or some kind of terrorist attack. They might articulate underlying aggressions, anxieties, a sense that if it's all going to shit, it might as well all go to shit, that if society seems to be in crisis, then we might as well destroy it.
When London is awash with the waters that have melted from the glaciers and the icebergs, and the River Thames has flooded its banks, and when London has caught fire from uprisings and atomic attacks, and when London is abandoned by its inhabitants, when the masses and the rats and the cabbies and politicians have vanished, left, expired, and the streets have become ghosts of what they once were, what will it mean? What will it all have meant? All the banks and town halls and offices and luxury studio flats and blue plaques and exhibitions, the cranes, the rubble, the ornament, the artifice, the advertisements and metal spikes on buildings to stop pigeons from perching on the ledges. What purpose will London have when money has no value and government has dissolved? Why visit those relics stored behind the glass cabinets in the British Museum when Parliament itself has become a relic of functioning society? Nature will watch as the stocks plummet and the shops run out of bread, just as we watch as oceans turn to plastic and forests are stripped bare. Nature will stain concrete and peel paint, just as it always has, but with no one to hurry after it to tidy up. When nature retaliates against human civilization, London will cease to be. When human life has extinguished and society crumbles, the city will be emptied of meaning. The buildings might still stand, but they will stand for nothing.
I'd certainly say that there's an irony that's often encoded into these films, which is that the initiation, the reinitiation of society, that it implies that everything might just start again and end up the same way. These films are often invested in a fairly cyclical view of history. To a certain extent, we live on a daily basis in a disaster movie, and one of the potentially exciting things, I suppose, about disaster movies proper that are set in London is that they can reveal that underlying logic and paint it on a great canvas for us to see. I suppose ideally, politically, that would be the most productive thing about them, is that they make us rethink the city that we inhabit, not just for aesthetic purposes, not just because it gives us a sort of escapist pleasure, but because it actually makes us conscious in some acute sense of the creative destruction of capital as it re-engineers the city we live in.
When London becomes too hostile, the city dweller flees to the countryside. In the countryside, they find sanctuary, a place to hide and recuperate. Away from the shady corners and hidden dangers of the metropolis, they can finally breathe. There are no collapsing buildings, no cracks in the tarmac to fall down. In the countryside, crucially, there are hardly any people. No one to point a gun to your head or infect you with illness. You can drive without stopping and find vast open fields that feel like a return to nature after a lifetime of artifice. But the fantasy of escape never lasts. Soon enough, the city dweller runs into the same problems that they sought to leave behind. Refuge turns to dystopia, and saviours become aggressors. People are just as dangerous, and life just as fragile as in the city. Desperation, revenge, and corruption exist beyond the M25. Mass extinction, in this day and age, might still arrive without warning, no matter how far north you drive. And so, if there is no escape from this mess, and if the mess is not the fault of this place, but of our own mistakes, then why not experience the city as we wish? In the city, there are moments of peace to be found. There are places that offer melancholy glimpses into the past. There are places that take part in a temporary respite from the city's evolutionary cycle. They stand on withered legs, abandoned and eroding. For now, but maybe not for tomorrow, they exist without function and gradually return to nature. Within the city's rapidly shifting pattern, there is the possibility of finding moments of joy and the possibility of redefining the city for the better. London is, after all, exactly what we decide to make it.